Hello, people, my wonderful female goddesses that listen to the show. And I really love that you are listening and you let me know. Today, we have a very interesting woman. Not that all my women aren't interesting, but this is a topic that I don't think we've addressed. And it's about sex. And my guest is Fanny. Now, you're going to have to pronounce your last name. How do you pronounce your last name?
Leboulanger, literally meaning the baker, if you want
Oh,
to have
I
fun
love
with it.
it. I love it. So, Fanny is going to talk about sex and enjoying pleasure and building your own inner power in a way that will be a tool for you to thrive sexually. I think I got that right. So, Fanny, where are you from? I obviously France.
Yeah, exactly. I live in the south of France, in a city named Toulouse.
Toulouse, like Toulouse-Lautrec. And
Yeah,
do you still live there or do you live somewhere
yeah.
else? You do? Oh, that's wonderful. How's the weather there this time of year?
Kind of gray, which is
Oh,
great because it's November. It should be gray
it
already and
should
cold
be.
already.
Yeah. So, you're also a yoga teacher, correct?
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
And a doctor too.
Oh, really? Yeah. What is your doctorate in? Did you say doctorate? You have a doctorate?
Yeah,
And
I'm a
what is
family
that?
doctor as well.
Oh, a family doctor. Good for you. So, you do your show in French and English. I was looking
Yes.
at it. So do you have like one episode French, one episode English, or is it the same episode but in two different languages?
I am actually translating the one I put out in English in French, so that usually goes 1 week in English and 1 week in French.
Okay. And do you have guests on your show?
Not yet. I'm
Not yet.
doing
You're doing a
100%
monologue.
solo
Okay.
at the
Oh,
moment.
well, I mean, there's different ways to do podcasts, and I like this genre because I just love people and I love meeting new women. So there's so much I could start with. Let's start with this patriarchy and the conditioning that comes from that, and sometimes trauma that comes from that. And I grew up in the United States, in Pennsylvania, with an alcoholic father, and very patriarchal. It was in the 50s and 60s that I was in the home. And what are your thoughts on that as far as our self conditioning?
I am part of the dismantling patriarchy team, definitely. But what I think is the most detrimental to women is how this conditioning is making us never feel enough, whatever you do. You can do as much as you want. There will always be something wrong with you. If you are curvy, lose some weight. If you're thin, get some muscle. Enjoy your sex life, but not too much because you're a slut or
Slut.
you're frigid
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yes. I totally understand that. And going from my life from a good Catholic girl to
Mm.
a divorced woman who the Catholic Church wanted no part of, I had that bumpy journey because, all those years that I was so in love with church and all those things, and then to be told out. And I hadn't done anything wrong. My husband had cheated on me and
Mm.
over and over. So that's just one example how it exists where the man's a man, that's what they do. The woman, you're a whore, right? So, so sex positivity. Explain that term for us.
um, we could all have different definition of one term, but I like to think sex positivity as changing our mindset regarding our sexuality. Actually stepping out of the place of shame, fear, guilt, or even just use as a tool, like the tool mindset that can go around our sexuality and actually taking it for what it is, a
Mm-hmm.
connection to our true pleasureful nature, a connection to our sexual nature, and a good way to connect either with yourself or with others. Really, basically sharing with people how sex can be beautiful and is not a ticking time bomb of problems. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's all
I,
of that.
I know when I did get divorced and I was young, I was just young when I got married. I was divorced, I was probably 22. And the first man I had sex with, when it was over, and he was a good Catholic boy, he was going to a Jesuit university, a couple years older than me. And after it was over, I said, "Do you think I'm going to go to hell because I had sex with you? We're not married." And this was like 1970 or 1969. I mean, and sex revolution, so to speak, was going on here in America. That was a big deal. And he said, "No, I don't believe that, and you shouldn't believe that either." So that was good to hear. And then, of course, when you were sheltered and held back all that time, your young years, and you discover sexuality outside of marriage, um, sometimes you go a little crazy, like you want to do it a little too much and indiscriminately. And because it's so new to you, and let's face it, sex is enjoyable, especially when you're young. So, what would you define a healthy sex life?
In my opinion, a healthy sex life looks like what you want, where you can make choices from you and what you truly want instead of your conditioning or others' opinion.
Mhm.
So a healthy sex life can have intercourse if you want, or it cannot. A healthy sex life is something you create all of your life, and it looks like what you want.
I see. So that's a good thing for me to hear about because I'm 75. I've been with my husband now we're together 36 years, we're married 34. Okay. And I cannot picture, if he goes before me, I cannot picture being with another man sexually. Okay. But like you just mentioned, that does not necessarily mean intercourse with another man, right?
Yeah.
Sexual intimacy can just be touching and holding each other, right? Is that what you're going with that? Yeah.
You can choose the flavor of intimacy in your sex life, and let's face it,
Yeah.
things changes depending where we are in our lives. So healthy sex life is also a sex life that is adaptable to your circumstances. If you just gave birth, for example, of course, you may not go 100% yahoo, and that's okay. It can
Yeah.
also be healthy to take a pause and press pause at some point if you need it, as long as you still has the need to pause and get back to this dynamic, this connection to your sexual nature if you want.
If you want to. Good. Another thing too is I myself, whether it was genetic or environmental, got into addiction when I was young, alcohol, and it was very acceptable. Pretty much everybody drank in my town, and as long as you weren't falling on the floor, you were very accepted. It wasn't a big deal. But then when I got sober, I had to re-educate myself in how I felt about sex, etc., because I was emotionally numb. Do you know that term, emotionally numb?
Of
Yeah.
course. That's the definition of what I do, helping people get out of emotional numbness.
Yes. Explain to people that might not get that what emotional numbness is.
I think the best way to describe this is how little, at least this is what it was for me and what it is usually with the people I work with, is how you feel little. Like when there is something amazing happening to you, you wish you would felt the joy 100% more. You are living amazing things or just good things, and somehow nothing grasps, nothing stays. The memories are from a blur, have this blur feeling, and you're basically sleepwalking your life or living, living a numb life, living something that doesn't feel alive. That's
Yeah.
what I see in emotional
Yeah.
numbness.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think you hit it right on the spot. And the other thing which goes with that is living on autopilot, right?
Yep.
Just you just get up and do the same thing every day, and it's what you're supposed to be doing, but you don't find joy in it.
Yep.
And the pandemic was quite a eye opener for many, many people. And for myself, being I had to be inside because of autoimmune diseases, and I had breast cancer, et cetera, et cetera. And my husband is stage 3 Parkinson's, so he's not always in the mood to talk and have conversations. So I felt lonely in that situation. And I put myself back in therapy. And I'm a big believer in therapy, in talk therapy especially. And my therapist had said, well, in the afternoon, if you're starting to get upset with him because he doesn't want to talk and etc., go in your room for an hour, tell him I'm going to my room for an hour and write. And I did. And in 6 months, I had a book.
Mm.
And why I bring that up is that it kindled or rekindled a part of me that had always been there. And what is it now? 3 years later, I wrote 3 books and I have the podcast. Now, that would have never happened if I didn't say, what's wrong with me? What can I do to get better? Right? So, do you find a lot of your patients that that's what they need is just a little nudge?
Mm. I think the idea of channeling the energy that is there at the moment and transform it into something else, like what you do, like you're getting upset, and instead of losing the energy of this upset, anger, or whatever, you're transforming and using its power to do something else. Usually, the people I see, whether it's patients or coachees, they do it in another way, in the sense that they're using the energy to actually make them feel bad about themselves.
Uh-huh.
And that's when you're noticing that,
Mhm.
and you're actually having enough or beating yourself up and being at war with yourself. You start to notice there might be room for change. That's how it works. Deciding to change the story of the energy you're using.
Yeah, that's right. Channeling that energy. And that what was happening was I'm very self-aware usually. And I had been kind of mean to my husband. And I realized that that was depression because I have been diagnosed before with chronic depression and anxiety disorder. And I went, oh, you're getting depressed and that's why you're being nasty to him. But once I channeled that into something creative and therapeutic, I wasn't nasty to him anymore. So that definitely was the problem and the solution for me. For me, um, I am totally, when I think back on my life sexually, and I put it into decades, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, totally different, totally different. And some of that, I think, is because the way we are put together when we're young is we are biologically structured to have children. So now you correct me if I'm wrong because you're the expert. So I think our sex drive is stronger. What's your opinion on that?
Mm, I'm I just need to be sure I understood that correctly.
Sure.
That's because there is the possibility physiologically to have children. The our most sex drive would be while we're younger.
Yes.
I actually have to disagree with that. There are really studies that show that, especially even it might be even more thriving. There is this. Let me put down my thoughts for a second. There is this saying that usually sexual energy or the frequency of your intercourse or your sex life decreases and basically dries while you get older.
Mm-hmm.
And that is simply not true.
Mm-hmm.
There is so many of us, as we age, we stand in the boxes of the autopilot, living a life that isn't ours. And the more we grow up, the less it is ours because we have responsibilities, we have a lot of things. So when you're 100% disconnected from yourself, then it's hard to have a thriving sex life. Also, there is a lot of things about your health directly, your general health. And when you take care of yourself and continue eating correctly, practicing a physical activity, things like that, you maintain a good health balance. So, of course, you're going to have, like, this is a root of a great sex life as well. And even more, there are a few things that you can do. So many of us are stuck with vaginal dryness, for example, and just some lube that you should use at any ages. And
Mm-hmm.
also when you are more mature is something really, really interesting and to be considered. I think the lack of sex drive that many of us go through while we age is how is more related to our circumstances changing or not changing than the decrease of our sexual nature, which is this is something that feels different.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying, what I'm hearing is that your sex drive doesn't change what you do, right? The Reader's Digest version of that. I mean, your
um,
body changes, your circumstances change, um, things like that. Even I would think too, like in a long-term marriage or relationship, um, the beginning is more passionate, and then you go through a lot of things in your life together, and health problems, of course, with us, and then it's maybe um, a different feeling. It's not passion anymore. It's love and comfort and feeling safe. Now that would affect, I think, a little bit how you interacted. What do you think about
yeah.
that? Yeah.
I think more than a sexual drive, what doesn't change is actually our sexual nature. Because when you think about it, sexual nature, as in sexual energy, is what creates life. So this is what is making, what is feeling, and what is making us alive. So our sexual nature doesn't change. What changes is how we relate to it, what we do with this sexual energy. And it's more a question of how do you care about your sexual nature, even if you are in a long-term partnership. How do you care about each other's sexual energy, sexual nature? Do you keep the fun? Do you keep the play? Do you take care of yourself, or do you use the comfort? And there is nothing wrong with doing that. Many of us do it. We're all humans. But when you have the comfort, the love, then this taking care of your own nature goes kind of secondhand. Just like when it's easier to eat in an unhealthy way than eating healthy, somehow,
Yeah.
especially when you start. So it's really easy to get into this love, compassion, comfort idea and totally letting go of cultivating your sexual energy.
Mm,
And that's a decision that you can take. Which one would
right,
you like?
right.
There's nothing, there's no good answer there.
No, and of course, again, with I think more men than women. I could be wrong. I think men base their masculinity a lot of times in how well they perform sexually, and things of that nature. And I don't think a woman quite needs that reinforcement of, oh, well, I'm great at sex. You know what I'm saying? Like, do you think there's like a male female perspective, I guess?
There always is, and there's a good chance there is a good chance there always will be. But what I find really helpful in the person I work with and in the work that I do is to actually allow people to dissociate their self-worth from their sexual activity and their quote unquote success regarding sex for many reasons. Because success isn't is different from person to person. And it's actually not really a good idea to to put your self-worth in relationship with something that is external.
Yeah. So do you kind of say, would you agree with me though that men are more likely to do that than women?
Um, I'm not sure. I'm not really a fan of generalizations.
Mm,
That's what I work as a coach as
okay,
well.
got it.
And I really try to attune to the person's situation on a societal level, maybe. And at the same time, maybe not, because if you go with the cliche of the man emphasizing his self-worth because he's successful in sex, it can be the other side for women. Like when your sex life isn't that great,
Mhm.
you first, let's be honest, when it's not going good in bed, usually it has a huge impact in your life.
Yeah.
And maybe we can say it works for both, for male and female. It's just that it doesn't apply the same way, I think.
Yes, like that I agree. So, I've had two children, and I had them the old-fashioned way, the
Mm.
painful way, and I've had several surgeries, including the hysterectomy. So I know that you talk some about pelvic health, okay, and how that can improve your sexuality. So talk to us about that.
Our pelvic floor is the base of everything.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
For many reasons. First, because it is really a part of our health in general. So many physical conditions like urinal leakages, or even pain during sex, or a lot of our conditions are coming from tight pelvic floor and or a weak pelvic floor. There is a lot of emphasis in the media and in mainstream in mainstream about how we should strengthen our pelvic floor. Whereas for so many of us, before strengthening, we have a tight pelvic floor. And so you can't strengthen something that is already tight. And so you're getting more and more symptoms. So this is first what we should focus on. And also, we hold so many emotions there, whereas it's ours, our history, or society, or anything. And you can't enjoy, or maybe you can, but you would enjoy more your sexual life or intercourse or things like that with a relaxed pelvic floor, I should say. And when you feel aligned with this part of yourself, you have more sensations, for example, you have more inner space. You have also huge release of all these emotions that may have blocked you for a while. And when you have released that and you live your life differently, it's really, yeah, it's really important to take care of our pelvic health.
That's fascinating. Some of the things you said really interest me. First of all, like, how do you know if you have a tight pelvic floor or not? How would you know? Physical examination by a doctor?
I think as long it's really challenging to give a broad answer about that, but on a general level, if introducing anything in your vagina is painful, I
Yes.
would consider, and I would consider that really with big strings and big quote unquote. And there makes me think about that
Mm,
because, and also sometimes the tightness just needs some time and some foreplay to be released as well.
mhm.
So yeah, there is the physical release, there is the turn on release, there is so many conditions have this tight pelvic floor for, as as an origin.
I think what I'm hearing now is that if you've experienced maybe some trauma, both either physical, sexual, emotional, that it can actually affect your pelvis, your pelvic area, rather. Huh,
Of course.
very interesting. That is interesting. All right, that answered that question. So, so obviously, sexual health is a multi-layered journey. That's what I'm hearing from you.
Oh
So,
yeah.
how do we get our sex lives from meh, like your word, meh, to hell yeah? Hell
By
yes.
coming home. By coming home to yourself. And that's very vague. And that's because there is a whole tool palette tool to get to that. You can do it with bringing more mind body consciousness. You can do it with reconnecting to your pleasure, which is a great thing to get to, Matt, to hell yeah. When you actually own yourself the right to have pleasure and to actually feel good. And
Mhm.
also being in tune with what is going on into your body. We actually, you can get a hell yes by allowing yourself to be who you are. And the good thing with working in your sexuality is that it actually brings you a practical way to do so instead of working with yourself and with affirmations and mindset and things. So many of us get to stay into a meh situation because we work on ourselves so hard with many methods and amazing things that are not enough. And when you bring your sex life to the table, and it actually creates becoming whole, integrating your trauma,
Mhm.
reconnecting to your emotion, working with your inner child, liberating the family dynamic, and allowing yourself to meet the emotions with love and pleasure. These are just a few tools that we can use to bring ourselves to hell yes.
Yeah. So, Fanny, if you could, what's one final thought you would like to leave our listeners today? Some final
You
thought.
are normal. There is nothing wrong with you. However broken you think, however special, like painfully special with your specific history, you think you are broken, I promise there is nothing wrong with you. What I usually say is we actually are really smart beings. What usually happens is that a part of us didn't get the memo. So
Well, that
there's
goes
nothing
back
wrong with you.
to, for me, the patriarchy and the mentally damaged men in my early life. A lot of that uh,
Yeah.
is the foundation of things that, and I did do a lot of that work that you mentioned, the family dynamics. I did a lot of inpatient and outpatient counseling when I got sober, but I had to get sober first because,
Mm.
I had to be aware, I had to be present, to do that work. And you have a podcast yourself.
Yeah.
What is the
About
name of
actually,
it? Okay,
excuse me,
go
about
ahead.
actually helping people getting their self evolution to the next level by falling in love with their sexuality and coming home to themselves.
What's the name of your podcast?
Your sexified life.
I
Keep the
like
Y at sexified.
Excited. I like that. And how often do you have episodes?
usually once a week to once every 2 weeks.
Wonderful. Well, if you get to the point where you want to do guest appearances, I am
Of course.
available.
Yeah, of course.
Available. And I really enjoyed getting to know you and talking about this. This was very, very
Yeah.
interesting. So, girls, look up that podcast, Your Sexified Life. I know that there are many women out there that are not getting their 100% potential of their sexuality. I would be one of them, I will admit. So thank you. Thank you so much for coming, Fanny, and I hope to see you soon.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, as well, who tuned in today.
Yeah, great conversation. Have a great day. Bye.
Yeah.